Hello, Alex. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm really, really good. And it is so lovely to have you back on the podcast. It's been too long. And for those of our listeners that haven't met you before, would you just like to start off by introducing yourself and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking to myself when you welcomed me back on the show, I'm like, I think this might be my third time being on your show.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've done quite a few episodes together and we've known each other for a while. Like, I think we met right when I was quitting my teaching job and starting my career, which was my career in sobriety and yoga, which was 2 years ago, which is just so amazing to then be on this journey together side by side. So Um, anyway, little introduction about myself. I'm Alex, and I kind of call myself sober yoga girl on social media, and I primarily support women in sobriety through yoga. So I do these 30-day sober yoga challenges online. I one-on-one coach women. I run 200-hour yoga teacher trainings, and then I also have this community, the Mindful Life Practice, where I run yoga retreats mostly out of Bali. That's where I live, but I also do them around the world now in Mexico and back in the Middle East. And next year I have one in Spain. And so just like a ton of different things going on in the fields of yoga and sobriety.
Amazing. And it's just so cool how much you've built your business up in the time that I've known you, and what you've achieved and how many people you've helped. It's just absolutely amazing. I'm super proud of you, and what an inspiration to everyone embarking on their sober journey, because when we let go of alcohol, this is how we manifest. We exponentially grow, and a year passes and you look back and you're like, wow, look at everything that's happened. And that you're a classic example of that. So super inspiring. And I'm really interested today to ask you loads and loads of questions about some of the kind of deeper yogic philosophy. I'm such a geek and I love learning. And I really love to learn more about how yoga, in your opinion, is supportive of not only a sober journey, but really our lifelong healing journey of self-development and up leveling. So yeah, where do we start? Where's the best place to start with this, Alex?
Yeah, absolutely, man. There's so much depth to it. And the interesting thing about yoga in the Western world, and I was literally just having this conversation half an hour ago. I was like sitting there on the coffee with one of my friends, and we were talking about, yoga and cultural appropriation. And the thing about yoga is that it originates from India and it was adapted and kind of brought around the world. And when it was brought around the world, one of the primary aspects of it that became so widespread and you see in studios and gyms across the world is what's actually called asana, which is the yoga postures. And asana has turned into the Western idea of yoga, or the worldwide idea of yoga. When people say the word yoga, they think of asana, and those are the postures. The interesting thing about yoga in general is that there's quite a few yoga philosophy books that yoga is founded on, and one of these is Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. And Patanjali's Yoga Sutras has 196 sutras, which are like little threads of like ways in which we should kind of go about our life. And only three of those threads or three of those lines are about asana, about the postures. So out of 196 things that he's saying, only three of them are do the postures of yoga. And I find that just so interesting. And on the one hand, I'm like, yes, we have kind of appropriated this and turned it into something that it's not. Yet on the other hand, I was teaching a yoga teacher training last week that just wrapped up in Bali. And I was saying to the students, all of us have ended up here because we wanted to do the poses of yoga, right? We thought that it would be cool to like get flexible or get peaceful or like whatever we thought would be great about the asanas, build our strength. And that was like the doorway to this portal where now we're here in Bali studying to become 200-hour yoga teachers. So on the one hand, yes, it is maybe not the correct meaning of what yoga is, but on the other hand, it's like this portal that brings people on this really deep spiritual journey that they don't even know that they're stepping into. And so it's like it's a mixed thing, but that's kind of, I guess that's where I would start.
Yeah, and I mean, that it is interesting, isn't it? How that's just such a small part of what yoga is, but yeah, in the
Mhm.
West, we think it's the only part. And I know, oh, I've heard more than one person in my life tell me that they like yoga, but they're not really into the spiritual side. And to me, I'm like, well, that's
Mhm.
just gymnastics then, right?
Totally. So true.
Yeah. So tell me more about the sutras then. What are they? What do they mean? And how are they helpful for healing?
Yeah. Okay. So Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, Yoga Sutra 1.2 is yoga's chitta vritta nirodha. And
Mhm.
what that means is yoga is the stilling of the fluctuations of the mind. And so I find that so interesting because Patanjali is basically starting out the whole book by saying that the whole point of yoga is stilling the mind. Is basically the whole thing is about our mental health pretty much. It's like what are the tools that we can put in place to help us have better mental health. And there's 4 books of the sutras, and the most relevant, I think, to a lot of us is book number 2. And book 2 is contains the 8 limbs of yoga. And the 8 limbs are pretty much like practical steps for everyday people like you or I that are living in like the everyday world to work towards that state of stilling the mind. And so we have 8 limbs, and we have the yamas, which are the ways that we can interact with ourselves. We have the niyamas, which are, sorry, I flipped those around. The yamas are our interaction with the world around us. The niyama is our interaction with ourself.
Mm.
Limb 3 is the asana, which are the poses, which a lot of us are familiar with. Limb 4 is the pranayama or the breath work. And
Mm.
then the upper limbs are kind of like sequential steps towards like enlightenment. So we have pratyahara, which is turning inward. And if you imagine like a turtle putting his head inside his shell, like that's the practice of pratyahara. We're like going inside of ourselves. And then we have dharana, which is a state of concentration, dhyana, which is our state of meditation, and then samadhi, which is eventually our enlightenment. So pretty much we're following these steps to work towards a state of enlightenment, which is really just coming to a state of like peace and contentment and union and acceptance of the way things are. And I think so many of us pre sobriety are kind of living in this state of like kind of numbing from the way things are or avoiding the way things are. Or really, I know I was searching for something in the outside world that I didn't realize that I had to like search within myself. And learning about the sutras and learning about yoga philosophy gave me kind of like a guidepost to for my life, I guess.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. Pre-sobriety, I describe my life as being a little bit like a hamster in a wheel because you're like
Yeah.
moving through the matrix, like getting up, like cracking on, doing what you need to do, but you're kind of asleep and you're just numbing everything. And whenever you feel uncomfortable, it's like, oh, that's a bad feeling. Let me numb that. And for me, a huge part of this healing journey that we go on in sobriety is about stopping labeling things as bad, feelings as bad, seeing them all as helpful, and looking inward, looking at them. And I suppose what you're saying is that the yogic philosophy is a really amazing tool with different strands that helps us
Yeah,
start to process and move through these, right?
totally. Totally.
Amazing. So when you are coaching people then or guiding people in one of your challenges, how do you use these different strands to help someone navigate, let's say, like their first 30 days alcohol free?
Hmm. Um, yeah, that's such a great question. So in my sober challenges, we have these meetings once a week where we get together and we will kind of be talking about like different yoga philosophy themes or concepts or ideas and sort of processing our lives. And in my longer challenges, we will spend a week focusing on each yama or niyama. And so I'll start with one example, which is like the practice of ahimsa is the practice of nonviolence, and that's yama number 1. And so people often hear that and they think like, okay, I'm not a violent person. I've never punched someone, I've never hit someone, so I'm got that one check. And really looking at how you're embodying and practicing ahimsa so beyond how you're physically interacting with other people. And I really look at it as like this thing about how are my thoughts? How are my words? Are they violent or non-violent? Like, am I thinking judgmental thoughts about other people? Am I causing other people harm by the things that I'm thinking or even the things that I'm saying? And how can I look at other people around me with a sense of non-judgment or a sense of compassion? And sometimes people have these big epiphanies. Like, I'll share one thing from like, it was like, I think it was over a year ago that I was in one sober meeting, and someone had this epiphany of like, man, I got really upset with my son the other day because I thought he was just avoiding coming into dinner. And then I found out after that really, he was breaking up with his girlfriend, and he was like really being quite compassionate to her in the moment. And by me reframing and realizing that I'm judging him without realizing that he was actually doing the right thing that he thought in the moment, right? And it's like little things like that of using the yoga philosophy to reframe our daily interactions to, there's certain things that could really trigger you or set you off about other people. But when you're able to sit down and apply these tools or frameworks to your life, you can often resolve a lot of the issues in your life.
Yeah, and I love that, because what you're really saying there is that judgment, and Gabby Bernstein has got written a whole book on this, right?
Yeah.
Judgment is a form of violence. Like, it sounds really extreme, but it's all on, everything's on a continuum, right? And actually letting go of judgment is such a huge part of doing our own inner healing, because usually we're judging other people, right, to make ourselves feel better, and it can become a form of numbing. And certainly something that I remember reading that book by Gabby Bernstein, The Judgment Detox, and being like,
so good.
It is a form of numbing. That's so interesting. So in terms of when we are moving through what I call uncomfortable feelings, which we used to call bad, how would you recommend that we use the different strands? Because I always think movement can be quite helpful for moving feelings through our body. But what would your kind of step-by-step, let's say I've come to you and I am like a week into my sober journey and I'm feeling all the feelings, I'm feeling horrible. What would you recommend that I would do?
So I would say I'll share with you what I offer my participants. With everyone, it's different. Like, they're gonna try things, and you might find like, okay, this isn't really resonating with me. But what's really resonated with my community is a very holistic method of tackling it, which includes movement and an asana or physical practice every day. And I do think it's really important to move your body to like get things out of you. And so the asana, absolutely. But then also the practice of really coming to that reflection can happen in many ways. I provide like a journaling workbook, which goes along with the yoga philosophy throughout the 30-day challenge. And so every day you'll be introduced to a yoga philosophy concept, and it will be explained to you. And there's like a little reading that I've wrote, and then an opportunity to journal on it. And so you might find that those journal practices resonate. Also coming to discussion, coming to sit in a sharing circle. And this is actually the second yama of yoga. It's satya, which is the truth. And we do a lot of sharing circles in the mindful life practice, and it's an opportunity for women to get together and just share their truth of what's going on with them in that moment. And when you're processing with other people, you get an opportunity to hear their stories and their reflections, which can change the way that you perceive the world and you perceive them. And so that is what I would recommend, like yoga practice, journaling, sharing circles, and being in community. And I also think there's a real value for like meditation and pranayama practices as well. And that's something that I'm going to be working on, creating a structured new part of the mindful life practice membership, actually, that's going to be including. So I have my 30-day sober challenges, which are excellent for people who are starting sobriety. But how do we maintain that sobriety long term? And I think that's really important. And I do have an community membership, which is amazing, on my website that people can be part of, but I'm going to be bringing in more structure to it, which I don't know when this episode is being released, but in September, I'm going to be coming forward with themed months and Dharma talks, which are spiritual talks for each week, and then meditation and breath work practices. So I haven't announced this yet, but that's going to be coming up. And so if you're someone that's been in sobriety for a while and you're looking for some spirituality, that's basically going to help you. It's sustaining practices, really. That's something that I would offer for you there.
That's amazing. And there's a few things that are coming up while you're saying this.
Yeah.
So first of all, you're really linking together, for me anyway, how all of these different strands work together. Because as you say, yoga is really about our mental health, our spiritual mental health. And I mean, I found so often when I want to spiritually connect with myself and to process something, it starts with movement, which is the yoga, which is the asanas. But when we move, we then create space, we create stillness, and we get downloads, and we're like, okay, hang on, I'm getting some wisdom. Let me journal that. Let me meditate. I can sit in stillness when I've moved it through me, right? And then we get all of these intuitive hits. So that all clicks, and then coming in with community as well, and that support. And what else? The other thing that I really love that I was picking up on is, and I always say this to my clients too, the getting rid of the alcohol is the boring bit. Like when we've got that out of the way, that's when the really exciting stuff starts. It's the spiritual healing journey. That's when we start to really look at, okay, where can I heal? Where can I expand? Where can I up level? And it's a journey that never ever stops, because there's always more. The universe has always got more for us, right?
It's so true. Yeah, so true.
That is so cool. So when you look at like meditation, for example, so lots of people, when they start a sober journey, we start opening ourselves up to new self-care practices, don't we? Because alcohol takes up so much space, and when we let go of it, we've got all this extra time. We want to do things for ourselves. So if we've got listeners that have never tried meditation, what would your kind of 101 beginners introduction to meditation with a little bit of movement look like?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So there are so many. It's funny because I was actually just talking about this with my friend earlier too. He was asking me about, meditation and mindfulness and how is mindfulness different than meditation. And what I was sharing with him is that there's so many different styles of meditation. And so there's a mindfulness practice, which is really just, being in the moment, having compassion for the moment, noticing the moment exactly as you're experiencing it, whether you're experiencing like anxiety or grief or sadness or pain. It's just kind of like, okay, I'm feeling this right now, and acknowledging whatever you're feeling, as opposed to like numbing it or avoiding it or wanting to go somewhere else. And so that's one practice. Something that I do a lot of in my teaching is guided visualization. And so I will lead people on a journey, and I will invite people to like a visualization. I'll give you an example. One that my students really like is imagining like this vacuum cleaner on the top of your head and just kind of like suctioning up all the stress and chaos and like whatever you're holding. And so there's that, but then there's some people that, the act of visualization doesn't really resonate with them, and something more simple like mindfulness would feel right. And then there's some people who mindfulness is just like too difficult. And so something like a visualization would feel right. And then there's some super traditional practices like japa is repeating a mantra. And I actually have these mala beads that I made in front of me, but it's super traditional. This has 108 beads. And so you would count each mantra with each bead. And that might be good for someone who the repetition and routine and structure of it is a lot easier than any of the other options. So if I were to introduce a beginner to meditation, I would say explore all these different kinds and figure out which one really works with you in this moment, and know that it's going to be like ever evolving on your journey. Like you might find one form of meditation really works for you at one point, and then you might find that it no longer resonates anymore. And it's just being open and curious to like wherever the path takes you. And I still love guided meditations, even though someone said the other day, it's kind of like training wheels, and the idea is eventually you're doing it on your own. And I'm like, okay, well, I've been in yoga for like 15 years and I still like putting on a guided meditation and listening to someone else guide me. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So if that works for you, finding a YouTube guided meditation, or I have some on my website in my community, that's a great place to start as well.
I love that. And actually, what I'm hearing when you're talking about this is, number one, being alcohol free for me is about not conforming, not staying in the box that everyone says you have to stay in. It's about like approaching life with your own creativity and that kind of unlimited feeling of, I can make this anything I want to. But the other thing that I'm also hearing there is really, it's about taking yoga off the mat. Yogic philosophy is beautiful, but it's really beautiful when we can apply it to our day-to-day life. So, not just in our amazing yoga class, but, we go into work and we have a stressful day and someone upsets us. Like, how can we then apply our yogic philosophy to move through that? And what you're describing is acknowledging like, oh, okay, like, I feel really dysregulated now. Like, yeah, that's made me feel really uncomfortable. That's okay. Like, let me sit with that. And using it for that. And I suppose that's how it can be so, one of the reasons why it can be so supportive in our alcohol-free journey, right? Because again, as you said, we're so used to numbing these feelings. Like, how many times have in the past did we have a horrible day at work and we'll come home, we'd be like, oh, I'm gonna have some wine. Obviously that's what we do when we've had a horrible day. And instead now it's like, no, let me do some yoga, let me think about how I feel, let me journal that, let me meditate, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So in your own journey then, did you started yoga before you became alcohol free, right?
Yeah. So my story with yoga, it's so fascinating because I think it was like an innate knowing from childhood, which I don't even remember. But when I was like 10, there was this pamphlet of like, they called them the after four activities, which were like the programs you could do after school. And one of them was yoga. And I got my mom to sign me up. And that was the first time I ever did yoga. So I was 10 years old. And the funny thing about this time in my life is that I also had a newspaper. I had created a newspaper called the Family Times, which I would distribute to like my uncle and my grandma and like my parents. And my grandma kept every paper, which is so cute. I did it from like age 10 to like age 12 or something. And she kept every single one in her cupboard. And my sister was cleaning out her house a couple years ago and sent a photo. And apparently the cover article was like, breaking news, Alex wants to be a yoga teacher when she grows up. And I wrote this when I was 10. And I don't remember it at all, which is so interesting.
Oh wow, so you always knew, your soul knew that you came into this lifetime to do this, didn't it, really?
Totally. And then through my whole teenage years, it was like I would like see an ad for a yoga for teens program and like make my mom sign up, or like do yoga for beginners. And so I was like kind of in and out of it throughout my teens. And then I started having like big mental health crises and really was drawn to yoga as like this stress release practice for that. And when I was 18, I knew I was going to be a yoga teacher. I don't remember the 10-year-old thing, but definitely at age 18, I knew that this is like what I want to do with my life. But I think I was experiencing such big emotions and I was coping with them through yoga and alcohol. And when my drinking got worse and worse and worse was also the time I got less and less connected to my yoga community. And that was because I was really deeply involved with a yoga studio in Canada. And I worked there for a long time. I would clean the studio for free to get yoga classes. And then I worked reception and I loved everything about it. Like I loved being at reception and meeting people and asking questions and checking them in and talking about their lives. And I loved all of that as much as like the actual teaching of yoga. And so I worked there for like 5 years. And then when I left Canada and I went overseas, there just wasn't such a strong yoga community first of all, in Kuwait. There was one yoga studio. It was like an hour drive away from me. And I taught yoga at the Hilton Hotel. I was like the only yoga teacher there. And so like I was the yoga community, which is really hard if you're trying to sustain your spiritual practices and you're the only person who's like living those at that time, you know? And then when I got over to Abu Dhabi, there were some yoga studios there. There were more than Kuwait, but I found it really hard to get a yoga teaching job there. And so I wasn't really in spiritual community. And this is when my drinking got worse and worse and worse and worse. And so when I got sober, yoga became what I went to support myself through that period of my life. And that's when my practice got really serious in terms of like I was practicing on my own, practicing on the balcony, doing it every day, and it really became such a support when I was feeling triggered or dysregulated or really struggling with getting through the first few weeks of sobriety. Yoga was like the tool.
That's amazing. So it was already kind of there and ready to catch you, and kind of dove right into it. And that's really what you've created with the mindful life practice, isn't it? You've created this kind of almost like a safety net that you let people, you kind of catch people with when they go into their first few days, weeks, months alcohol free, that they've got this structure that you provide around the different strands of yoga. And one of the things I love about it as well is there's so many classes that fit into different time zones. So it doesn't matter what part of the world you're in, or even if you're like up at like 1 a.m. and you feel a bit like meh, there's like probably a yoga class on in a different time zone that you can just join in on, right?
Yeah, it's so cool. It's so cool that way, and how widespread it's become. And as a result of that, we have people from all parts of the world, and then we get like different perspectives on the world from hearing these different points of view. It's like it's really quite amazing.
Yeah, it's super cool. Super cool. I bet everyone listening is really keen to have a look at the mindful life practice and what you offer, and thinking about signing up. So could you let us know like where people can find you online? You've also got your own podcast, haven't you, as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So Sober Yoga Girl podcast is my podcast. And on that show, I have people join. Annika's actually been a guest a couple of times. And I have people from all over the world sharing their sobriety stories. I do some yoga philosophy conversations as well. So if you want to kind of go deeper into what we're talking about today, that is my podcast. And then on Instagram, I'm pretty active on Alex McRobs. So AlexMcRobs, and you can kind of find everything that I have going on there. And then on the mindfullifepractice.com, I have all of my upcoming yoga retreats listed, yoga teacher trainings, and information about my membership and yoga challenges there.
Amazing. I'll be sure to put all of these links in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for coming on today, Alex. It's been an absolute pleasure to catch up with you. And yeah, I look forward to hearing in the future more things that you're up to on your amazing yoga alcohol-free journey.
Oh, thank you so much. This has been awesome.
Thank you.